Margaret, Hean, is it?
Some bits here to be handed out to people. Okay, that's right. Some bits down there.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and councillors. The submission that I put in was very brief because it was done at the last minute and I was having a few issues with your web page, so my apologies that it is so brief, which is why, and also because my voice is not particularly good, I've given you a copy of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm here as a rural ratepayer to oppose the removal of the rural rating differential in the long-term plan. I understand that the rural differential was established to assist those undertaking rural activities on their land, but I fail to understand how an arbitrary figure of 5 hectares can be justified as a benchmark. We've lived in Jessens Road, Harewood, on our 2.7 hectares for nearly 30 years. We breed and milk pedigree Saanen and Toggenburg goats, which I presume is classed as a rural farming activity. Living where we do, on the boundary of the airport zone and within the 65 decibel noise contour, there is nothing that we can do with our property except farm it. We're not permitted to put a granny flat up for my elderly mother, nor are we allowed to extend our house, all of which, subject to building restrictions, we would be allowed to do on a residential site. We also have no ability to oppose or complain about any other rural activity, such as the dog boarding kennels that were established next to us as a non-notified resource consent, as we were told that as rural dwellers this was something we would have to put up with. I presume that if we are going to be treated as residential and charged rates as such, we will then have those rights. As you've no doubt been told by others, the costs involved in living on a rural property with no access to water or sewage imposes much higher costs. For example, our power bill for pumping water from over 35 metres below ground costs over $600 a year, let alone the costs of servicing and replacing the pump and well. And if we have no power, we have no water. So we also have to make provision for firefighting, etc. during the summer months, and we have to pay for all our own power poles. We also have the cost of septic tank maintenance and emptying, which is also far greater than the $200 a year paid by town residents for their sewage connection. I also note on our rate demand that we pay extra fees to the Regional Council for animal and plant control and bovine TB works, and these services are not paid for by residential ratepayers. The removal of this differential will result in a 40% increase in our rates, and I consider this to be unjust, especially considering the fact that we're unable to do anything else with our land because of the restrictions imposed by the airport zoning. If this zoning were to change, then perhaps the changes could be justified. I would suggest that the council look at reducing the amount of land required for the differential to 2 hectares, with some clarification as to the amount of land around the residential unit. We have less than many town properties around our house, with the rest being used for grazing. Since looking at the rates being charged for properties in our area, I would suggest that perhaps it would be beneficial for the council to look at the resource consents granted for commercial activities in the area and to check where these activities are still being granted the rural rating differential instead of the business differential. I'm sure this may help council funds. I firmly believe that there should have been consultation with people affected, as was suggested in the briefing paper to the Mayor, and cannot understand why this didn't take place. For those of us who are trying to maintain our land for farming activities, and especially in areas where no other land use is permitted, I consider this to be very short-sighted and unfair. And on a personal note, my husband, who's now 67, is retiring this year, and we've strived for the last 30 years to get our property so that we could retire and enjoy it and raise our animals on it. We've budgeted for an increase of perhaps 8 to 10% in our rates each year, but there's no way that we'll be able to fund a 40% increase this year and then an 8 to 10% increase perhaps next year. I don't know what we'll be able to do, as selling our property is probably not something that will be very easy to do, because being in the 65 decibel zone, we're very restricted as what can be done, and you know, selling it may not be a possibility. So thank you, that really upsets me what's happening.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. We have received a number of submissions. You may have seen the commentary in the paper this morning, so we're very alert to both the process and the proposal that's on the table, and we'll be certainly taking all those concerns that have been raised into account when we make our decision. So does anyone have a question that they want to ask? Yanni?
Thank you. You raised two kind of main issues. One was probably more relevant to our district plan. So I just wanted to check, are you making submissions to our district plan about the notification requirements, or are you aware that that's been considered?
Which notifications requirements?
Just around the dog boarding kennels, the non-notified resource consent.
Yep.
Because basically the government statement of expectation is our
Yanni,
district plan is removing.
I'd rather not
those
have a discussion around the district plan review while we're dealing with the long-term plan. So,
I know, but I think it's important people
if we'd like
realise
to,
that that's a decision that
we
will be
could
made through
get
that
staff
process.
to follow up with
Yeah, that would be good. And maybe circulate the information.
with Margaret, if
That would be really
be
good. I would really
suitable.
appreciate that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
submission.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.